All right, welcome back everybody. So the last thing we need to do is just a few more little details. We need to cut holes in all three of these for the screws to go through. You don't want to try and jam a screw through 3D printed plastic. It tends to spread the plastic and break it. So we do need to always create screw holes for it. And then we're just going to do a little bit of rounding over. So let's get started. To create the holes, I'm going to create a new sketch. Notice how the workflow is always like create a sketch, make some drawings, and extrude those drawings. Create a new sketch, extrude, sketch, extrude. It just keeps going like that. All right. I want to find the middle of this like rectangle piece. To do that, the best way to do is grab a line. I'm going to change the line type here into a construction line. And I'm going to drag a construction line from this where I see that square, it means I'm on that corner, down to this one where I see the square, I'm on that corner. And what a construction line does, one is it's a dashed line instead of a solid line, and it doesn't let you extrude that line. So it won't break up your extrusion into a bunch of little pieces. So that's why you use a construction line. I'm gonna grab a circle real quick, and I'm gonna click right here. I'm gonna go down the line until I see that triangle. That triangle is the symbol for midpoint. So that's the middle of that line, which is the middle of that rectangle. I'm gonna click there and drag out. Now I notice that my circle here is a dashed line, which means it's a construction line, which means I won't be able to use it for an extrusion. I don't want that, so I'm gonna come over here. See how I'm just dragging the circle with me? I'm gonna turn the line type off and then drag the circle back over. Now I want this hole to be big enough so that my screws will pass through it without touching it. So I'm gonna measure the width of the screw threads. So I'm going to put the screw in just like that and measure it. And I'm getting 2.6 millimeters. Well, I want to make this extra big just to make sure it's clearing. So I'm going to bring it all the way up to 3 millimeters and hit enter. Now, before I showed you how to make a circular pattern using something you've already extruded, you can actually make circular patterns of your drawings as well. I want to put this circle in all three positions. One thing I could do is go and draw this line, is to repeat that whole process 3 times. Or I can use this cool tool. It's called Create Circular Pattern. And the object that I want to pattern, so it's asking me what object you want to pattern. I want to pattern this object here. Then I'm going to come down here and click on Center Point. And I'm going to say I wanted to do the circular pattern around this center point. And it's going to assume I want to do it 3 times. And I'm going to be okay with that because that's how many times I want. I can increase the quantity if I wanted to, or decrease the quantity if I wanted to, and click OK. So now I've drawn 3 circles all the way around. I'm ready to extrude. So I'm going to hit E for extrude. I'm going to click on all 3 of these circles. Now, had I used a real line here instead of a construction line, this circle I have to click on the left side and the right side. It would just be split into 2 pieces, but that's the only problem it would cause. I'm going to tip it a little more so I can see what's happening. And I'm going to drag this arrow back down into the object, which means I'm going to cut a hole in it. Now I don't like having it like overcut a bunch, and kind of getting it perfect can sometimes be hard. So what I'm going to do here is a really cool trick, which is come over to extent type and change it to all the way through. When I click on all the way through, it's going to know to go all and stop at the very surface here. And I'm going to click OK. Awesome. Now I've got these screw holes in here that I can use to screw it down to the plywood. Now, last thing we're going to do is we're going to make it look a little more professional. All these hard edges aren't the way that people make things that look good. So what we're going to do is round over all these edges and make them a smooth thing. And here where it's a sharp corner and a sharp corner here, it makes the part weaker. So by rounding it over, we'll make it stronger and better looking. To round stuff over, we're going to use what's called the fillet tool. So there's a fillet button up here, or if it's not there, go down here to modify and find the one that's fillet, or you can just press the letter F, whichever you prefer. So I'm going to hit fillet. And I'm going to go to this. I'm going to click on this edge. Let me click it and drag it around. This edge here, this inside edge here. I'm going to be careful when I click. If I misclick something, I can come over here and hit the X and start over. But you have to start all the way over. So take your time on the clicking to make sure that you're there. You don't want to do this or it's going to round over every edge all the way around it and create a huge mess. So I'm going to hit an X here to clear that. I'm going to click on this edge, this outside one. I can't see this one, so I'm going to flip it over. Yep, there it is right there. And now I'm going to hold down the mouse wheel like a button. I'm going to drag the model over. I'm going to click in this corner, this one. Maybe I can get this one. Yep, this one. I'm going to flip my model over slowly. And I'm going to click in this corner. I'm going to drag my model over and click on these four. This one, this one, this one. Drag it on over this way. Find that last edge. Awesome. When I'm done, I should have 12 edges that I'm going to be rounding over. And let's give them a 2 millimeter round over. Let's see what that looks like. Ooh, that looks good. Look how cool that is. Like, it rounds over the outside ones this way, and it knows to automatically round the inside ones kind of in this direction. So I'm going to say OK here and lock that in. Now, the last thing we're going to do before we print is we're going to round over these inside edges. This will help with strength as well. So I'm going to go back to my fillet tool again, and I'm going to click on all 3 of these inside edges. The reason we're doing them in 2 different moves instead of all at once is they're going to require different amounts of round over to look good. All right, so now I'm going to zoom in a little bit here, and I'm going to choose a round over of up here of 2 millimeters. And notice how the round over is too big on this side. It looks kind of weird. So I'm just going to modify that, and I'm going to say, well, what if we did like 1.5 millimeters instead? Ooh, that's getting closer. So let's try 1.2. Ooh, that's really good. Let me zoom in on that. Oh, not quite there yet though, right? So I need a little bit less. So I'm going to go 1.18. Ooh, I like it. I might be able to do a little bit, 1.17. Oh, that's perfect. See how these 2 corners are coming together really nicely now? So that's going to look really sharp when we're done. Click OK, and we are rounded over. This is ready for 3D printing. So this process is actually quick and easy process. Ooh, before we do that, what if like the motor, for example, the thruster, I made that like pretty flaky green color. So we can do that with this base. We can say A for appearance. And you have all kinds of different things to choose from down here. From concrete to fabric to glass to liquid to whatever you want. You could choose any of these. I like to use the paint ones. And I'm going to use a glossy paint for this. And I'm going to choose a blue gloss. Now you'll notice there's a little arrow here. That means that I haven't downloaded it yet. If you just click on that, it takes about 5 seconds or 2 seconds to download. And then you can grab the blue and drag it onto your object. And now your object is painted blue. So I'm going to leave mine as blue this time. All right, I'm going to hit close there. Feel free to play around with that. It's super fun. And now what I need to do is send this over to get it 3D printed. So again, I'm going to hide the thruster here. I'm going to go into my bodies folder, and I'm going to right click on the base and do save as mesh. The format here, so the selection, I have one thing selected, which is the body, which is perfect, or the base, I should say. The format, you can choose any of these formats. They're just file types, and RLVOL programs can read all of these file types. I'm going to leave it at STL binary. Leave it as millimeters. That's what we measured everything in. And then, let's see. Oh, we can preview the mesh. So what a mesh file is really this. It's a whole bunch of different triangles all over the surface of the body that defines the body. So it defines it by a bunch of different triangles. In fact, in this case, there's 6,038 separate little triangles in here. The refinement means how many triangles it's using. So here we could go to low and see it's only using just under 2,000 triangles to define the body. Now for something with simple shapes and curves like this, you probably don't need much refinement, but there's no harm in having high. It just makes a bigger file size, and that's not a problem for the small things we print. It's never very big. And then we're going to say, okay. You're going to save this file. Down here, click on Save to My Computer. You're going to click here, and you're going to save it somewhere on your computer. I don't think you have access to Google Drive on these computers, but you can just save it to your desktop even. just remember where you're going to do it. I'm going to save mine to my downloads folder on this PC. And then I'm just going to give it a name that I can remember, thruster base. So I'm going to need to find this later. So I'm going to hit save. That file has now just been saved to wherever you said to save it. And you're going to open up Prusa. So Prusa Slicer is here. You can do a search for Prusa as well. It's spelled P-R-U-S-A, and it will have the Prusa Slicer app. If there's a Prusa G-code viewer, you don't want that one. You want the Slicer. This is the file. This is the program that takes your object and it creates all the different layers that the 3D printer is going to print on. It's going to print layer by layer. Let's see how that works. So to find our file, we're going to go File, and we're going to do Import, and the top one. Notice that's all those file types that we could have just had just a second ago. It reads all of them. And I'm going to come here and I'm going to go back and find it. So I put mine in my downloads folder. It's called Thruster Base. I can see I just did it a few minutes ago or a few seconds ago. I'm going to click on Thruster Base and it's going to import the file. Now this would be a weird way to print this. If I tried to print this, let me show you what it would do if I tried to print this. I'm going to slice it. So it's going to go and create all those slices for me. And it detected print stability issues. Yeah, I bet you did. So if I'm going to drag this down, and we can see how it's going to do. This is going to be the very first layer it prints. Let's zoom in on it. You can zoom on this one by rolling the mouse ball up and down. And you can drag it around by pushing it down like a button, just like in Fusion. I'm going to use the arrow keys and go up. It's going to create each of these. You can see the pattern that the 3D printer is going to take. This is going to be really problematic. Right here, it's going to try and print all the way out over space, around, and back. The plastic's not going to hold up. It's going to just sag and fall down. This would be a terrible way to print this object. All right. So down here, right now we're in the preview slices mode. I'm going to click back here to the 3D editor view. That's going to take me back to my object. I want to print this with the base down on the bottom. To do that, I'm going to just simply come over here, find the place on face, click on that button, and then I'm going to click on the bottom face of the base, and it's going to slap it down to the bottom like this. Awesome. There it is. Now I need to come back here and do some slicing. Before I can do that, I got to check my settings. I want to have this set to 0.3 millimeter draft. This tells how thick the layer is going to be. This is the thickest layer that we can print. It prints faster, and for something with a simple shape like this, it's totally fine. If I was printing like little characters with faces and noses and everything, I'd want to choose a smaller layer height to get that detail in. You should have your filament set to generic PETG, and you should have your printer set to original Prusa i3 MK3S and MK3S Plus. If those aren't set, let me know. I can help you with those. I'm going to click Slice now. It just did all the slices. At the bottom here, I can see some really important information. I'm using 7 grams of filament. That's the plastic. It's about 2.3 meters, so about 6 feet long of the filament a piece. It's going to cost 20 cents of plastic, and it's going to take 28 minutes to print. So it's going to be done printing really fast. All right, so now we're all sliced up and ready to go. Next step is to go over to one of the printers, choose one you want to use based on the filament color you want. And next to the orange screen on the side of the orange is a SD card. You're going to pull that out and bring it back to the computer. I'm going to do that right now. All right, here's the SD card. I'm going to take this and put it into the computer. I don't think yours will pop up a screen like this. Notice how these are all the old files that are on the SD card. I don't think it pops up like this for you. If it does, go ahead and close that screen. Down at the bottom now where it says Export G-code. G-code is the actual instructions telling the printer head where to go to print each layer. So it's just a whole bunch of instructions. It's called a G-code file. I'm going to come over here to this far right icon, which is the export to SD card. And it should bring up your Prusa SD card. If it doesn't say Prusa up here, let me know. I'll help you find it. And I'm just going to say here, save. It says called thruster base. This tells you the 0.4 is the nozzle size that we're using. 0.3 millimeter is the layer height we're using. PETG is the type of plastic we're using. And MK3S is the printer we're using. and 28 minutes is how long it's going to take. It got all that information for the file type over here on the side. Okay, hit save. And now I'm going to eject the card, pull it out of the computer, go put it on the printer, and launch the print. You're all ready to go. Great job today.